Call the City Council work session order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Here.
He will be here. He called. He was in travel, en route.
Here.
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 Felder.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. So this is a work session that's planned for this evening, and the agendas were posted, and it's, as you look at the agenda, it calls for citizens' comments and, of course, work session agenda, and, of course, adjournment. So being it as a presentation this evening, and just for some background, when there's a work session, it means that while there be discussion by the council, there is not a decision-making that is done this evening. That comes at a regular city council meeting when it's the quorum is present to make decisions that are maybe through recommendations or as council wishes to bring forward. So there will be discussion this evening, and it being a presentation, and there may be those that wish to have comments this evening, but I thought if the presentation would be first, there may be some of those questions may be answered, but at the same time might also give a idea of what's been presented to the city manager by those that have an interest in the some of the future of the ALCC. And of course, I'm not negating any comments in any fashion. And at that point, if there may be some questions or a discussion, I should say, by the council, and following that to see if there's a discussion points from those present that wish to speak on to the topic. And as always, as in the at the top of the rules of the chamber as far as time and recognition of all that's here. So with that, Mr. Pastu, I think we'll start with your, I'll say, presentation information and some of the background.
Thank you, Your Honor. We've had a couple of work session discussions after the City Council had taken action to terminate the lease agreement with the ALCC nonprofit board for use of the facility. And so tonight, I had said that we'd put together a more detailed presentation for City Council over the weekend. You would have received a memo from me, and I'm essentially going to go through that for the public's benefit, the memo that I sent. So I've broken for tonight's agenda just an introduction in background about where we're at, a review of council goals or ALCC goals and objectives, some considerations regarding organizations, some alternatives, and then at the end, my requested action, and I say action, but direction from council tonight. You can't make a formal action tonight, but to give me a sense of where you're headed in preparation for the lease terminating. So, and then it gives certainly a time for questions from council, and then a general discussion that probably would involve the council, and as you had mentioned, possibly those in the audience as well. So as part of the introduction, I did reference that council had taken action on June 3rd to provide 90-day notice of the lease termination to the board. City attorney submitted the eviction notice that would essentially take effect September 13th of this year. But it did trigger the need to consider alternatives for future operation of the center. And in some ways, and I'm going to probably say this a few times, but it does give us some perspective of looking at a clean slate for where we go in the future, given some of the circumstances. So I guess going to, looking at the background of it and associated with the action that took place on the 3rd, I think part of it was triggered with correspondence I had sent to City Council, as I do, providing regular updates. And I think some of the concerns with the finances were certainly weak internal controls, the $26,000 operating loss. Money wasn't missing. They just spent more than they had taken in there at the first quarter of this year. The executive director at the time mentioning that they may not be able to make payroll for this their next payroll. And then part of it, as we talked about, irregular financial and bank statement reports coming to the ALCC board. And then general uncertainty with where we were with the 2018 audit report and the 990 filing that needs to take place. And then lastly, the suspension of the Commission on Aging funding is the financial aspect of it. And then there was his general concern with the governance, inconsistent communication with board members, confusion regarding responsibilities with between administration and the board. I think also just lack of adherence from time to time with the bylaws that were in place for the ALCC board. And then, frequent board turnover has been a problem in the recent past. And while I go through this, I don't mean to belabor. I'm just stating what the current, the most recent couple of years have been. Obviously, there's been some great successes with the ALCC over the years, but there is clearly some challenges here in the at this point. Remedial efforts. I mean, the city and the ALCC board adopted a strategic plan in June of 2017. Last year in June was an adopted funding agreement that actually added another $16,000 the council put into the appropriation to cover additional utilities. And then along with submitting a number of items related to board functions and policies, there was also a board effectiveness workshops in which there was 2 sessions held last fall to try and provide the ALCC board with a good understanding of how effective nonprofit organizations work. So part of it is also looking at the ongoing commitment that the city council and city administration has discussed. Clearly, the $140,000 annual appropriation is still planned. The $16,000 for utilities, I still see that as going forward. This past year, there was $100,000 in grant funds related to replacing the roof, new boiler, some asbestos abatement, and some painting that went along with it. But currently out to bid right now is a $1.2 million program for labor park improvements that will be an integral part, I think, of the long-term operation of not just the park, but also the ALCC. And then we have $300,000 programmed over the next 2 years for kitchen addition and renovations for the facility. Certainly a big investment on the part of it. And I think, as I put in there bold, it does dictate that council needs to have confidence in a positive working relationship with the operator of the ALCC. And it kind of goes back to, okay, here's where we're at. Let's look at this as a clean slate going forward, given some of the immediate circumstances that we have, but also the programming and the funding that the city is committed to that immediate property area. So I'm going to go through the goals and objectives. They're summarized from the 2017 ALCC City Council strategic plan, but also some things that I've heard in conversations with other members of council as well as those in the community. I think first and foremost, at the June 3rd meeting, council made clear that the maintain and long-term expand youth recreational programs, certainly youth development and mentoring programs to continue and expand upon, expand program services and activities for seniors, expand educational programs, and I used latchkey services benefiting working families, something that I've heard. Partner with a community organization for adult education and job training has been discussed. Improving coordination with the Monroe County Library System for after-school programs, and then also coordinate with neighborhood community organizations for planned events at the ALCC Community Center as well as Labor Park. So part of it is as we go through this and revisiting where we are, what are the goals and objectives, as I would summarize just a moment ago. But what are the considerations, and this is from my perspective as a manager in going forward with a clean slate. And I think when you look at it, certainly you want an operator that has the experience in providing a broad spectrum of health, family, recreational, senior, training, education, and community support services. That kind of summarizes a lot of what was talked in the previous 2 slides. But also you want someone that's familiar with the needs of the community You want a strong and reputable organization with established governance structure. You want an organization that's established relationships with other community organizations and nonprofits, but also the demonstrated experience with securing grant funding and the capacity to satisfy the reporting requirements associated with these funds. These are very important aspects to not only once you receive grant or donation funding, but to continue that partnership is the ability to provide timely and accurate reporting as to how the money was spent, but more importantly, the benefits that derive from those funds. You want a demonstrated ability to communicate, utilizing various media sources. So you want a broad spectrum of being able to reach out to different people in the community using the media sources available. And then I think, and I put strong internal financial controls, but that goes beyond that. You want strong personnel policies, purchasing, just general operating procedures to have a strong organizational controls. But I put a summary with financial controls. I think they kind of all go hand in hand. But I think those are the strong organizational considerations that are important as we look forward. At this point, I've talked a little bit in some of our past sessions, and I'm going to summarize three separate means by which I think going forward the city has alternatives. The first is obviously being operated by city personnel. I'll go through that in a minute, what that would look like and what the weaknesses and strengths are. The second is I also talked about looking at the city forming a commission and/or a nonprofit. That has some challenges that I'll go through. And then lastly is contracting with a private nonprofit for the operation of the center. So, and that's where I'll end up feeling that we should be. But if we were to operate it with the city personnel would operate all facets of the center, would be subject to our policies, procedures, collective bargaining agreements. The director would be responsible ultimately for soliciting for grants and donations for the programs and services. The city council itself would approve all contracts and the annual budget. Likely would be operated under our Parks and Recreation Department. I think some of our strengths is we've internal controls, but we also have good ability to reach out to the community through various forms. The weakness is implementation time. This is not, I think, beyond the recreational end of it. It's just not our strength. And could we get there? Yes, but with time. When you're looking at a lot of these other programs, it would take us a while to get there. And the second one was looking at city forming its nonprofit or commission. Interestingly enough, you do find it in the Michigan Home Rule Act that you do have that latitude. It does take some time to get the IRS designation if you are inclined to do that. But if you were to also look at forming a commission that would be involved with the operation of the ALCC as well as working, in contract with the city for the operation of Labor Park. You could do that, but it would require an intergovernmental agreement to do that. And so, but in this form, I would look, city council would be making the appointments, improving the budget, think in terms of the DDA and or the Port Commission. Those are items that come before. They're component units of the city from an accounting standpoint, but you do have a great deal of latitude, similarly with Brownfield as well. There just isn't, as I'll mention, in a good, easy legal structure to get there in talking with the city attorney. But the commission, in this case, could approve grant and service contracts. Organization would be more nimble, focused on the center and park needs. Labor Park coordination with the ALCA, if I keep referencing, is an important consideration. The personnel that would be operating would not be subject to collective bargaining because it would be an independent organization, which would allow for more part-time and temporary employees, and that's usually what you're going to find in an operation like this, as opposed to ongoing regular operations, pretty predictable with city. you're going to have mostly full-time employees with some part-time and some temporary seasonals usually. But in this case, it would be, I think, a little structured so that it would have that flexibility to deal with the programs and services that may come and go. Federal grant programs administered by this potential commission would not be affected by the city's single audit requirement. Once we exceed $750,000 per year, we are required to go into an additional, more detailed audit of the use of those federal funds. At this point, we have pretty much our CDBG money and maybe some federal pass-through for different transportation projects, but we typically don't hit that 750,000 per year threshold. And I do see that as being an element of the operation. So, as I said, as we continue on, there's really not a good, clean statutory structure for this other than the intergovernmental agreement. And it certainly would take some time to establish it, even if it's by ordinance agreement, and then probably not functioning till somewhere into 2020. And it suffers some of the similar weaknesses with the city department. You would have to basically start ramping up personnel and people to be able to expeditiously deliver some of the services that I think we expect to continue going forward. So if we move on, and I briefly just put in there contract with private nonprofits. The ALCC board still expresses its interest in continuing on. I did provide in your packet a lot of information related to some of the items identified in the June 2018 funding agreement. They asked that I provide that along. I think they got everything in there, I think, other than just the ethics policy. Oaks Village form I put in there as a subsidiary organization. You do have on your in front of you a great deal of information I received this afternoon related to that and their proposal for consideration for the city council. MCOP provided some information about their vision and how they would contemplate operating the center. And then the Village Group. This is collaboration with Bill Saul and former executive director at the ALCC, Felix Hill. I provided in there some of the detail what they had as far as proposed bylaws, some of their mission, vision statement, as well as some of the programs that they would envision. The one qualifier in there, as I included in the memo, was that they have yet to be established as a 501c3. The one thing with the Oaks, as I put up there, that they would treat this as a subsidiary of their 501c3 organization. And I think if you look through the information that it would identify that they would look to form a separate board or board of directors and run the accounting separate from that. But it would be a subsidiary of their Oaks Village 501c3. Now, it's hard to see from the audience standpoint, but contained in the packet is a matrix that goes back to looking at what I thought were the important considerations, and going across the screen is looking at city operations, city commission, ALCC board, Oaks Village, MCOP, and the Village Group. If you were to do some rating, and there's 3 different methodologies that you could employ if you were to go this way: checking the box, ranking them 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever your preference is, or even just ranking them individually with maybe 6 being the highest and 1 being the lowest if you were trying to rate there. There's a number of ways to utilize this matrix, but I thought it was important to present this to City Council to give some format and structure to focus on the organizational considerations. So the far left column is simply a restatement of the earlier slide with that. So what I'm asking the City Council tonight, I can't take a formal motion, obviously. I'll give that qualifier again, but it's to provide us some direction regarding the organization type or nonprofit. Clearly, if you go the route of wanting to have it as a city with city personnel, we got to build the internal organization. If you go the route of a nonprofit or commission, that's going to take some time and legal work to get there. And then lastly, if you negotiate a contract with a private nonprofit, and I would ask that you consider an effective date of October 1, 2019. I did put in the memo if you were inclined to negotiate a private with a private nonprofit that I think, given the investment that would be made on the front end of that organization, that you certainly would be looking at a minimum of 3 years with probably more than likely some clauses for continuing on maybe year to year for extended for a period of time. So with that, that's what I ask of council. Is I know I went through a lot of this quickly, but I just kind of wanted to give you a sense of what the alternatives are and what, from a city administration standpoint, was felt to be the important considerations as you make a decision on how we go forward.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bastu. So as Vince said, it's really about discussion. So I'm going to start and see if council has any clarification or questions for Mr. Pastu. But keep in mind, for those that are here, the information that was on the screen and was presented is kind of a review of information provided to council. The council had the opportunity to review that, and I do appreciate the additional information that was presented this evening. And as we're not making decisions today, so that information can be worked through with the council members as they after tonight continue to review. I'm going to make a comment on the matrix. I think that's something as a guide for the council. If there's any council member that may have a clarification of really what might be a process to be used, I know that Mr. Pastu mentioned some ways to do that. It's not something we're going to sit here and start filling out squares tonight or boxes about high, low, 1, 3, 5. That's whatever review that council does as they go through all the information is how do these items that are considerations met? And these come from Mr. Pastu as he looks at thoughts about each and where they may fall within that, I'll just say the deliberation that you have as we move forward. So I'll start and see if there's questions from council, from Vince, at least on the information presented. And if not, we can move forward for any other comments that council may have. Councilman Lamore.
Yes, just a question for Vince as far as the city running the ALCC. It sounds like there's a lot of, it could be very problematic for us to do that. And I for one, I don't think I would see it as being a good way of getting this settled under our belt, more or less.
I would concur. I think it would take us a long time to get to where I think we want to be in taking that approach.
Not trying to cross off a box, but
with all due respect, that's
seeing-
kind of when I went through this is how I would approach it, start clicking off some of these. And that was obviously part of the reason it was the first one is I thought, now this would take a while to get to where we need to. And it was clicked off my box pretty quick. If you were to ask me.
Yeah, I know it's one of the options, but I just think it's probably the weakest of all the options that we see in front of us right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why personally, I think it's something we probably should just eliminate as an option.
I think Councilman Felder may have a comment on that.
Sure.
Sure, and I have one too, so go ahead.
Yeah, it would not be preferable, it would not be my first or second choice for the city to take direct control in either of the fashions. I expect that's probably going to be pretty much a consensus this evening. I would very much prefer that a private nonprofit take control, so let's talk about that. Thank you all for being here this evening. We sure do have a full house. And I would hope that any of the entities that are in this room right now believe themselves to be partners for the project and the services and the programs that the ALCC Community Centers is trying to provide and has sought to provide in the past. And that whoever gets the contract, whoever is awarded this contract, that the other people, the other entities in this room will work with that person. I know that the seeds for growth in this community exist in this room today. And I can tell you that the city is a partner with whomever the city chooses to contract we will be supportive. We have $156,000 a year right now, continuing contribution towards the center in its operations, and a $1.6 million investment, it looks like, in facilities and capital for this year. So we're invested. Our chips are on the table. We have skin in this game. We are not in any way abandoning. This is not us shirking our duty to the community and letting it be someone else's problem. We want to partner with someone who knows how to best provide the services that we are looking to have provided to our citizens. And we look to you guys to help us with that. Well, I'll save the rest of my comments for that, and let's stay on point here. So thank you, sir.
Sure, and there'll be some additional discussion, I'm sure, as maybe we work through this. I guess how we start here and why, somebody said, well, why even present the city's role? Because there were those that have said, well, why doesn't the city just do this? And so in fairness to those that are here, I appreciate everybody being here, just as Councilman Felder said, because it tells me our community does care about what goes forward at the center and how we deliver service to the community as a whole and what are some of those priorities. So there were questions, well, why didn't the city do this and couldn't they do that? So those are always, you could say yes, but that's why he put it at the start and right through is you have to, if you don't kind of vet through that, then you haven't realized that the challenges and problems with that would be for the city to move in. And there's things that I think that when you talk about a city and a government, or no matter what government, things you'll do very well at and some things you should not be doing at. We've been down this road long, long ago regarding some of other items. So this is one that I would look at and say, this is not something we should be looking to put a structure in place for all the challenges that were stated. Doesn't mean you couldn't get there, but our issue is before us today, not the first of the year or later on. I think we're going to get there on a slow pace. I don't think that's necessarily the way it is. So as Councilman Felder and others has been said, it really gets down to then looking at those that have made an interest here in the nonprofit sense. And so we have four entities that are interested, and I think all in each in their own right have items that they will champion and do at the very top level, others that may be new to them. And I think, so how does that all work? And I think that's part of what our deliberation and thought process that each council member will have to do is, how does that fit? And I think the matrix helps as kind of a guide. It's not, I always say you can fill out a box and say, oh, that's it, that's the score. I don't think that's the way we can do it either. It's really kind of looking at how do we move forward as well, because that's the component. And how do you do that in a fashion that's before us today? And how long is how long do we continue to move forward? So ALCC obviously has some background, having been there and for years. But you look at the others, two are established and have experience in their sense. And one is, while it's newer, has I'll say a resource of personnel that have experience as well in their own right. So those are the things you kind of vet through. That's kind of like my own kind of open comment to when I look at this. I think we're in the right, at least I think for me, I'm in the right kind of arena moving forward in the nonprofit. And I always say you never know who else might watch today and all of a sudden get a phone call or talk to Mr. Pastu and say, we think we have something to offer. So, but those are things we'll have to continue to dialogue about. But I'll stop also, as Councilman Felder said, because there may be some other things. And Mr. Pastu has a comment. I'll see if other council members have comment to begin.
And in
Vince.
all fairness, one that has expressed interest, but I haven't had a chance to connect with, is the Salvation Army. They have expressed interest, and for whatever reason, I've been able to get back and have that communication. So,
and not to go down the list of other nonprofits in the community, there's been just conversation with the city manager of others, but it didn't get to the point here where we are today, where we have something in front of us of four entities. And so I'm not saying that we're still looking at that, but you always want to answer when somebody is caring about the community and what they may have to offer. And I will echo Councilman Felder, because when we get to the point we get at where we're going to be establishing a contractual relationship, any of these entities by themselves, I think, will struggle. Entities collectively will be successful. And how do we continue to partner that? Because you can look through the materials and see there's current relationships and partnerships now. So it's really, that's an important part to me as well, that I look around the room and I can think of times in certain programs where each of the entities have been at the table with the other. So it's kind of my statement. Let's see if there's other comments from council or maybe questions from Mr. Pastu. We'll continue on. Councilman Lamore, and then I'll come to Councilman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. I see many people in the audience that were monetary supporters, grant writers, whatever, for the ALCC in the past and currently. And I just want to make sure that they're actively involved with this process as well, so that they know what they're dealing with and what their potential is for potentially giving money to this new nonprofit, what they're going to be giving money to, I should say. So I'm assuming all of this information is going to be available to them as well.
Yes.
Councilman Germaini, comments, questions for the city manager?
In my mind, the way I see it is who is going to be the best fit for the entire community, the entire city of Monroe County. And there are a lot of options on the table and each intertwining with each other. So, and I see everyone in the audience as well. It's going to be what's the best for the ALCC and what way can we best move forward. So that's how I see it.
I'll see if there's any other additional comments from the council members, and Councilman Whitman.
I don't think that there has been a question from the beginning of this that we have no questions or concerns about the people. We know how much you care about the community center and how much that you want the best, and that's what we want too. And it's sometimes good is the enemy of the best, and people settle for things being better instead of doing what is best, even though it's uncomfortable. And that's where we're at now. So, we want to make sure that it stays open. We want to make sure that it thrives. And we want to make sure that when those services are needed, that the doors are open. So that is what has brought us here. And it's not like I don't think we really want to run it. We don't want to control it. We want to make sure that the children thrive and that there are services for the community, not just on the east side of town, but all of the county. Something that would be attractive to bring other people so that everyone is benefiting from the services that are down there. So that's my thoughts.
Yes, Councilwoman Viney.
I'd too like to thank everyone for coming out this evening. One thing that I know was on the PowerPoint, but I don't know if Vince actually spoke it out loud. A very important factor is the familiarity with the needs of the community. And while we would like to see the community center continue to grow and to be a place for the whole county, we need to, I believe we need to keep in mind that it is a neighborhood center, whether we designate it as that or not. And in actuality, we daily serve the needs of the people from the immediate community. I understand we want it to grow, and all of these agencies who have presented interest work with agencies throughout the county. But familiarity with that particular neighborhood is going to be an important factor in any decisions that I make because those are the bulk of the people that we serve every day. Of course, the community center has always been open to the entire county, and those are some issues we may not want to get into about the across the tracks conversation. I don't really want to have it, but if anybody wants to have that conversation, I'll jump in. But so things that we're not saying is that any group that comes there, in my mind, they have to be familiar with the, I don't want to say special needs, but with the unique needs of the Orchard East community, because that's going to be the bulk of the people that you're going to serve. Sure, we're open to everyone and everybody's welcome in different cross sections of the community come in and out, but daily you're gonna need to know about those families and communities and children that frequent that building every day. So that's going to be one of the most important parts in any factors in any decision that I make. That um, and I don't mean any disrespect, but you know, I like to say love is an action word. And I know that we talk very passionately about our love for the neighborhood and our love for the community. But some people been there hands on and they're showing that love daily. And others come in and out. And I'm happy for the interest here, but I want to keep that as a focus. Um, how have you been serving the community in the past? Have you taken advantage of many opportunities to help the community center before it got in these dire straits? And so I'm excited to see everybody here this evening, and I look forward to you all comments and concerns, issues, anything you have to say tonight is going to help us as a council, because not all of us as council members get to be in the neighborhood or at the community center daily, or even know about the organizations who want to come in now and take over. But so we really need to hear from you guys tonight. So I hope you'll feel free. I don't know how the mayor is going to facilitate that, but hopefully you'll feel free to come up and comment this evening. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councilwoman. So as I began at the beginning, there'll be opportunities for comments and we'll, there may be voices that want to speak and I won't say necessarily on behalf, but what you're looking for as a community. So I thought of something as we're listening to each of the council members, and I know it was difficult to read on the screen, and this can be made available, but I just want to review these. And while I don't think this is an all-inclusive list, as I started to when I read through the presentation and then when I received it here tonight. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to review them very quickly because those that are here may have been able to read it, and those that aren't here may not be able to. But so this is kind of some organizational considerations that the city manager put down on this, and there'll be others that council may come up with that freely can send that to the city manager for consideration by the council as well. And I think one of the items that Councilman Vining stated is on the list, but I'm going to go through them. So it's not in any particular order. It's just how they were placed on here. But it says experience in providing a broad spectrum of health, family, recreational, senior, training, education, and community support services. So again, these criteria, how would you look at each of the entities and how they provide that, or how you think they would provide it based on experience and maybe interaction or other outside experience they may have from their organization. The second one is familiarity with the needs of the community. I think that was spoken to. Strong, reputable, and established governance structure. Established relationships with other community organizations and nonprofit organizations. Experience with securing grant funding and donations, along with demonstrated capacity to satisfy the reporting requirements associated with these funds. Demonstrated ability to communicate utilizing various media avenues. Strong internal financial controls. Now, that may not be the all-inclusive list, but those are things that at least the city manager is presenting to the council for consideration of as we kind of, as a council, work through those. While it's kind of the first one is really all-inclusive of O'Reilly's, you could really pull those out because I think that as I look at some of the submissions and read through as well as the one that was here, quickly looking through as well, there may be some health or family items that are high on that group's list. And maybe recreational or training is something that's high in none others. The senior or education. So all those are kind of together. And I might, as I look at that, I'll think of where we're at and where we, at least I think that I've shared in the past of where I'd like to see the ALCC go and the expansion of programs, and whether it be outside the current norm, but also opportunities for growth for youth, the opportunities for them to have a broader perspective, and also opportunities for not just personal growth, but potentially job growth, of how they may look at a career and say, boy, this is something I think I can do. And then the opportunity to get that to a young person is in the young age. And when you're talking about, I think of the example when I was at the center one day and a young lad was just said, I want to be a chef. Now, maybe he was watching the Master Chef on TV. I don't know. But the idea he wants to be a chef. And I mean, boy, I said, you have the opportunity to do that. Because you can go to the community college, to the culinary arts program. You can, after 2 years, be that and be an opportunity to either work in your community if you wish to stay, but also maybe your own store. So that opportunity is very short, I think, or very narrow at times when they have that interest. And how do we grab that? So that's kind of that youth program talk I talked about in the past, and I think is important. And then community support services, and I think that first one is really a lot in there, but I think sometimes you have to be a little more challenged to go through. And Councilman, we went through the item that was provided to us ahead of time, and this time we're just taking comments from council. Mr. Pastu did review his presentation, which is a synopsis of his report he gave to us. This time we're just seeing if there's questions for a city manager or maybe some thoughts and ideas about whether it be city, and we've heard some comments that we're not, from council, we're not looking to have a city operation versus we have 4 nonprofits that have an interest, and how do we vet through that? I know you have the matrix as well, and I'll just let you know there's reviewing, because I think it's important we all get up to speed, but there's also an additional submission there that would take some time to review as we kind of work through this. And today is a work session, so we're not looking for deliberation to a decision, but really some comments about some fundamentals. I just reviewed the matrix for everybody that's here, that kind of a foundation of a start. Those that are watching or listening, so they understand that as well. So I won't repeat more than that. I'm going to see if Mr. Pastu has any other thoughts from where we're starting. I know we're still having discussion, so I know we're not to a point where but we also will get comments from the public here as well.
Well, and I was putting this together last week. One of the things I had in there, and I don't know, I'm shuffling around some of the considerations, but one of them actually I put included in there, and I knew there was 8 of them, and I repeated one of them twice, but one of them was organizational depth. And I think that is a significant consideration regarding when you have a long-term relationship, that you do need to have some support if it's a one-person show and you lose that person, you can struggle immensely. And I think the depth of the organization to be able to backfill a vacancy is important for the continuity of services and programs. So that was one of them. For whatever reason,
Okay.
Moving these around, I forgot about it.
Yeah, I didn't read the duplicate, so.
What's that?
I didn't read the duplicate, 'cause we
No,
already said that, but. Seeing if there's other comments from council, maybe we're kind of at this point. Councilman Michelangelo, if there's thoughts that you may have coming in. If not, we can listen to the public as well. I'm sorry, Councilman Felder.
As we're going down the list, some of the considerations that we'd like to employ in our discussions here, just sort of an addendum to the strong internal financial controls that the city manager put on the list, is that the specter looming behind the closet door there is we're going to get hit with this DTE thing. And that's kind of what brought on this ALCC discussion a year ago. And we are contributing an amount now to the ALCC that we are unsure if we're going to be able to commit in the future. I think that's important for the entities that are applying here today to be aware of, and that part of, at least what I'm going to be looking at in reviewing these applications, is a certain amount of financial independence in the future, and that as the city suffers financially because of what's going to happen to us with DTE, we do not want the community center to be overly affected by that. We would like it to have independent funding sources to be able to maintain the programming that we make available to the community without the level of support that we've been blessed to provide in the past. I hope, I'm trying to be candid without being crass. I hope that's honest. I do want to involve that in the discussion because I do think that it's going to take a tremendous role. in our decision. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think it's a good point when you talk about, having that financial independence or long-term sustainability. And it is a partnership with the city. And while we have challenges even now and future challenges, we know that nonprofits are going to have challenges as well. And that kind of ebbs and flows, and we recognize that. But how do we work there together to get there? And knowing that there may be some controls that are, I guess there may be aspects that are outside of both controls. So, that's it. Thank you, Andrew. I'm looking at a note, so I may have something else. Let's see if there's other comments from council at this point. So I think maybe we'll move forward and see if there's some additional dialogue that comes out of that, because just as I don't think is, you never like to think that one organization by themselves can come up with all the great ideas. And that's why I think all of you are here to begin with as well, because you think that you have ideas, but you also have experience. And there may be some items that you think about the matrix, things that you think should be added to this list as well. But there's many people here, and maybe everybody wishes to speak. I'm not sure, but I guess would like to hear is your thoughts about this. How, at least for me, is as we try to work through what the vision is for the center of the future, what maybe the vision is that some of you that are here wish to have, and what things we should be considering in our discussions. And if there's things you think from the matrix side or something like, hey, put this on the list, more than willing to, the clerk will make sure they get recorded and get to everybody if we don't all write them down. So,
I'm going to make sure that the microphone is on.
okay, please do. Thank you. Yeah, that way you don't have to keep turning it on and off. We'll just leave the microphone at the podium on. If anybody, when you speak, just name and address, because that's an idea, that's an importance for the clerk to maintain an appropriate record for our discussions. All set. So if there's those that wish to speak, public comment time will be now. We may have more discussion by council after, and then kind of where we're going to probably conclude after that. So if there's those that wish to make some comments regarding the what's before the council regarding the ALCC and the future operations, now would be the time.
Connie Carroll, United Way of Monroe, Lenawee Counties, office at 216 North Monroe Street. And I came and said I was going to listen and not speak, but Mr. Felder brought up an excellent point that I thought I needed to add to, in that United Way has been probably the second largest funder of ALCC for many, many years. And I just want those entities that are vying to assume that role, that there is no guarantee, as with the city, that that funding will continue. We have a lot of criteria. We're pretty strict about budgets, 501c3 requirements, board involvement, and different things that our partner organizations have to meet and qualify for actual funding. I'm not saying there will not be funding for a new entity, but I do not want these organizations to come in assuming there will be that United Way funding. Just to clarify that point, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there was a couple comments that came in. I think that it may have come to council members. I know it did to the administration and myself, because Ms. Carroll's point should be well taken, because as we started down the path here from back in June of the agreement and steps taken to get us here tonight, there were questions about current funding and calls about, well, what are we going, what are they going to do, I should say, not we as a city, but what are they going to do? How's this going to transition? How do they have agreements with an entity as a nonprofit now, and how that transitions? And I think through discussion with the administration, and I'll let Mr. Pastu speak to his comments, but what I heard was everybody recognized that their involvement is there for the reasons which the center operates. And as that moves forward, they're willing to continue until this decision is made for the most part, but I can't speak for the where some of the external funding comes from, whether it be from a United Way or other entities that are on the list where funding is seen. It's on in their budget and report of where revenues come from. So the point's well taken is while we have some of these criteria that we're looking at, maybe that's an item that I'll go back and see, make sure it's probably in there somewhere. Is I think there's about establish a relationship with other community organizations, nonprofit organizations. So as we hear that from other entities, they may be providing the city manager with follow-up. And if that's something council needs, that make sure that, I'm sure he'll make sure that we get that as well. So point taken, thank you. Other comments? Yes.
Hello, my name is Gloria Hawkins. I'm at 1520 Hampton Court. I'm with the Oaks of Righteousness Ministries. And I was hearing the word familiarity. And I would just like to say that the Oaks of Righteousness Ministry is familiar with the people in that area. I've been with them for a little over a year now. I help pass out sandwiches. I help volunteer on the inside. I help minister spiritually. And that organization is like none I've ever seen because they know people by name, and it's something to know people by name. They know parents. The children coming in, they love them. And those children need a place to come, to be. And can I just say this? And I didn't know I was going to even get up here, but at 13 years, I'm an only child, and I was a latchkey child. And at 13 years of age, I was on drugs. I was on heroin, because there was no community center for me to go to. Had my mother, a single parent, maybe had some place to send me to where I could be around other children, maybe I wouldn't have taken off and gotten into drugs. This center is awesome. I see the kids that come through there, but they need something to do. And I just hope you guys kind of consider the Oaks of Righteousness.
Thank you. Yes, name and address, please.
Good evening, Pastor Heather Boone, 924 East 2nd Street. So I just want to clarify this. Thank you very much, Pastor Gloria. In the consideration of Oaks, this was not something that was on our agenda, so our thing is, if there's a continuation with the ALCC board as it currently is, we completely support that and we will completely offer all of our services. But if there is not a continuation, then definitely, Oaks wants to be involved because this is our community, this is our neighborhood. I would ask if I could quickly just ask those who are here to support Oaks, stand up for me real quick. So I just made little comment yesterday. I said, hey, going to the meeting, anybody want to join me? And it's people from all over the area. I reached out this morning to Julie Everly. I said, hey, I'm going to go down. She said, I'll write you a letter. Dr. Kojo, Vancia, Life, who we work with, RSVP, who we work with, and all of these people put together letters of support today in one day. So we are here. We want to work with the community. As I sat down with Mr. Pasteur and talked with him, we've had a somewhat rocky relationship with the city council. And I admit a lot of that was on my part because I can be very young and bullheaded and, very passionate. And so what I told to Mr. Pasteur was, this is about humility, because this is not about me and this is not about my ego or what I think I can do. This is about the community. And I watch the community. I live in this community every single day. And so I just know that this community center is the heartbeat of the Orchard East community. And I refuse to let the heartbeat stop. I refuse to not be involved. So all I can say is you have 100% of Oak support and all of these folks here. We are here. And, we prayerfully please just consider us. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those present this evening?
Hi, my name is Milton Dunham. I've known Paula when Paula's hair was blonde and I had hair. So it's been a long time. And the thing that I recognize the most, I work down at Oaks myself, is that, if you think about it, how many men did it take to put one man on the moon? All those people got together and said, we're gonna work together, funding whatever, just to put that one guy on the moon. And when he got to the moon, he called back, I'm here. And this community, is bleeding, and you're trying to put a Band-Aid over a cut. It's not going to work. I'm a veteran, U.S. Army wartime veteran, and I know, that whoever you put in charge is the person that's in charge, and he tells people what to do. If you get the right person in charge telling people what to do, then you get an organization. It's the thing in the service says lead, follow, or get out of the way. Okay, I see kids coming down to the lunch program every single day. They've been neglected, they've been mistreated, they've been abused. But when they come up there just for that few seconds to get that sandwich or get that bottle of a bottle of water or that little juice, sometimes that's all they're gonna get all day. You know what I'm saying? And this thing that we do every single day for the community, if you take it out of there, you create a monster factory. I've been in the penitentiary, and that's what a monster factory is. And it's better to see that one man on that moon than nobody at all. And it's about us understanding who we are and each other. It doesn't matter if you're on that side of the tracks or that side of the tracks. The first thing they told me when I got here was, don't go on the end. Why not? You know what I'm saying? So when I finally went down there, in my days doing what I was doing, I didn't find any trouble down there. Trouble was in the person that brings with it. It's not the community, and it's about understanding that this is something that can be worked on. I mean, I'm pretty sure, what was that? I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure there's intelligent people I'm standing in front of right now, and the statement I made earlier that how many people did it take to put that one guy on the moon? But when he got there, he called back and said, I made it. And just to see one child say, I made it. I graduated college, because I went to community center. And I'm gonna say something a little deeper. I got molested when I was 6. And I didn't tell my mom until I was 8 years sober. But after I told her what had happened to me, my whole life changed. Because that weight that I had tied around me dropped off once I told my mom what had happened. And there's children that come down there, from all walks of life, and things like that have happened to them. And that's why they act out like that. But if they don't have, people like in the center or in the community to come talk to, they have to carry that burden around for a long time. So, whatever it takes, however you work it out, there's children, is waiting for somebody to say, I listen to you. And that's what they do down there. So, that's all I got.
All right. Thanks, Melton. Other comments from those? Okay.
Oh, my address, 724 Road, Monroe, Michigan, 48161.
Others present here this evening wish the gentleman, go ahead. Okay. I forgot the gentleman in the back, and then we'll take the next one. Thank you. Name and address, please.
How you guys doing? Omar Furden, 327 Arbor. Whew. I don't envy you guys right now. Everybody has opinions on who they think should be the best. I want to take my time to talk about my opinion on y'all's decision-making process. Every organization you guys have faced right now have their benefits, as you said earlier, Mr. Mayor, everybody. And I'm really glad to hear you guys saying that you guys are leaning towards the 501c3, taking on another entity for the city. That's a whole nother problem, as you guys know. So I'm glad to hear that. That's great. And I want to talk about the process, your metrics. I didn't really have all those fancy words, but there's 4 things that I came here and I wanted to say were important to me when you guys pick your 501c3 to take over. The first thing I want to talk about is the experience with the services they're going to provide. All these agencies provide services. All these agencies are awesome. They all do their own thing, and they specialize in different departments. But when you talk about a community center, you're talking about more of a grassroots level. You're talking about the outreach. You're talking about a wide spectrum. Think about that when you talk about it, when you make your decision. What are they going to bring, and how can they make the transition? Because the different entities specialize in certain things. But when they're running the community center, they're going to be transitioning to a different department, different animal. Think about, are they going to be capable to do that? The other thing I want to talk about is the money. The bills are not going to stop coming in. So in my being in the community from the Holden Grove Community Center, I can remember the days when John Tarassi used to run it, when we had the chess club that was there. There was the pool hall that was there. Those services are great for the community, but they're great for not just the Orchard East community. They're great for the whole community. The more services you have there, the broader the bridge, we can bridge the gap. We can bring, it won't be just one side of the track or the side of tracks. It'll be one community, and it starts with the community center. And that goes back to the services they're going to provide. You know, but John Tarassi used to make money when he was there. I remember Director Will Sweat, great guy. He used to make money when he was there. It was due to the activities that they ran. It was the chess clubs. It was the Gus Smacker tournament coming in. It was the kitchen is there for when we had the tournaments that were free. People still had to buy that $1 hot dog. They still had to pay for that 50-cent pop. That money helps revenue. So you have to think about that. The money's going to be coming in. Who's going to make that money? Which agency is going to make money? Will Sweat used to do the dunk booth at the fair. I remember that. $5, 3 balls, dunk whoever you want. Sometimes I was in the booth getting dunked. Sometimes I was dunking people. But they were making money. So think about that. Think about the experience with what they're going to bring, the money. And then the third and the fourth thing I like to talk about, they kind of go hand in hand. They're not no important than the other. Stability. What agencies are going to be able to be here and sustain themselves and be long term? And the fourth thing, the network. The network is another way of saying your community. We are building a community center. So please, when you make your decision, think about community ties. They all have community ties. I'm sure they all know the same people. They have the same Rolodex of phone numbers and contacts. We all have the same contacts. Nobody's nothing special. It's not a secret book. But how do they use them? What kind of network have they built? What kind of network have their directors built? What kind of networks have their boards built? So please take those 4 things into consideration: money, experience, stability, and the community, the network. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Gentlemen, yes, and then we'll see if there's others afterwards. Name and address, please.
Yes, Aaron Lavender, 1743 Mall Road. You know, the ALCC board is the only board that hasn't spoken about what's going on, and I think we're the most important because we're in a position right now that's going through it. And we've been patient. We have been resilient. And we showed a lot of integrity because there was a lot of things that was being said about the ALCC board that just simply wasn't true. And that hurt. I know myself personally asked to meet with city council 4 or 5 times just to get ahead of what's going on. I believe in 3 T's of partnerships. And I talked to the new staff. Well, let me say that I was just reelected as the chair of the board. And we have 4 new board members that have a lot of grant writing experience. They're very invested in what's going on. Will the new board members please stand up to show you who you are? And Roz is a board member right now. So I want to thank them because they could have folded after the 90 days was presented to us out of the blue. It took everybody by surprise. The ALC board wasn't here to respond to that. So we thought it was unfair. So a lot of things were happening, scrambling, a whole bunch of things were going on. And I just think it wasn't fair to not get our point of view of what's really going on. And I wish someone would have actually reached out to us and we could have actually sat down and had that conversation. Not that it's all in the newspaper or rumors this, rumors that. As grown people, as adults, I was hoping that we could have actually sat down behind closed doors and really worked this thing through because we are in place. We've been here for 75 years. 75 years. I know the vision of Arthur Lessel community. Arthur Lessel. I was a kid that was in the community center as a child. So I have skin in the game. I have given my blood, sweat, and tears to the community center. And those that know me know that. I have given DJ equipment. I have helped kids. And when Mayor talked about the child that wanted to be a chef, it was me and him that was sitting there when the child came in and talked about being a chef. Those are the things that we want to continue to do. And just 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we took these kids to Washington, D.C. 19 kids that's never been out of the state pretty much. And their family and parents trusted us with those kids. I was part of that leadership. Linda Faye McFadden, I believe she was here, she led that charge along with Anthony Hoskins. who is now the acting director, because we had to make some tough decisions. We had to react to what was going on. I had to, and the board had to make a decision. And that's why I commend this new board that we have, because they're tough. They're like I said before, when the 90 days came in, remember, we're a volunteer board, right? They could have folded up tent and just took off and said, listen, we don't want to be a part of that because it's going to be gone anyway. Now, we lost some board members because of that was put out there and presented that way, which is understandable. People got families, they got other lives that they want to, deal with. So they was afraid they're going to take the keys anyway. They already got things in place and planned. So it's going to be taken over anyway. So why should we stay? I get it. I'm not mad at them. I understand. But what I do say is I commend those who stepped up and said, you know what? We're going to fight this to the very end. We're going to fight this to the very end. I'm going to be here. I'm not going anywhere. Whether you take it or not, I'm going to be here with these kids. Until you take the keys out of my hand, I'm going to be there fighting, along with these new board members that show me that they're willing to roll up their sleeves and get dirty. We got things in place already. When I took over, the first person I called the city manager. I called the mayor. I called Pastor Boone. I talked to, I left a message for MCOP. I've talked to Connie Carroll. I talked to our shareholders and say, listen, trust in us. We're going to turn this thing around. Give me 6 months. Give me a 6-month extension and watch the magic that we can make happen. Give me 6 months. Give our group 6 months. And you're going to see a change. And if you don't, I will personally give you the keys myself. I will personally give it to you myself and say, here, take it. But it's not going to happen. Because I believe in this community. I believe in these kids. The heck with these tracks. I believe in those that come across the tracks. I'm passionate. Yes, everybody knows I'm a passionate person, but I'm speaking from the heart. And I am here in the spirit of Darren Hoskins, who is not here today. He gave his heart to the community center. I almost gave up myself, but I didn't, because Darren said, Aaron, stick in there. Fight for the community center. And this is the first time his league is not going on right now because of what's going on. People's afraid to get teams in because it's not going to be there anyway. It's a difficult task to fight. And I feel like we've been fighting it alone. So I'm asking City Council to give us another chance. Get in there, get in the ring with us. We can make some policy changes. We got new board members that can write grants. We can do all these things. I have no problem reaching across the aisle, talking to any organization that wants to get involved. But I'm asking you, the ALCC's been here for 75 years, and I want to be here for 75 more. I want to be here for 75 more. And it's up to me. I'm going to make it happen. And if it doesn't, I'm not going to say Aaron Lavender didn't try. This board didn't try. If it doesn't, you can't say that, because that would be a lie. I'm going to fight to the very end. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Aaron. Other comments from those present here that maybe should add to this discussion? Yes, sir.
Todd Riggs, 161 Lavender Street. Man, it's a tough one for me. Because I run a boxing program down there. And I reach a lot of kids. Some make it, some don't. But I've come across the tracks for many years to help those who need it. It really comes down to two groups, two organizations, ALCC or Oaks. Really what it comes down to. They're right there in the neighborhoods. Everybody else is an outsider. We tried the outsider. That didn't work too well. That's why we're here now. That's why we're here now. Aaron called me. I've talked to Pastor Boone. Both great people. Pastor Boone made her comment today. And who's done more than Pastor Boone in the community down there lately? Nobody. Nobody. But she's willing, if I'm right, so to think, she'll step aside so that they can continue. But she'll be helping them. Everybody else out there, I don't see it happening. We need somebody who's been there, who knows the kids, who knows the kids' parents, who their grandparents, their cousins. Somebody who's familiar with the neighborhood. The kids, there's only really two. If she steps aside, there's really only one. I hope you guys make the right decision.
Thanks,
Thank
Todd. Other comments from those present here this evening? Sure.
I'm Ann McCormick, 921 Washington Street, Monroe. I've been helping out at Oaks for the last over 5 years. I've seen commitment. I've seen people come from the city and all around different cities to come and volunteer. People that normally would not go down there. I was one before my husband passed, I didn't go down to East End. But since I've been down there, I feel comfortable. I'm not afraid. I've stayed there till 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes all night, helping volunteer with the shelter and that. Pastor Boone's not afraid to lift up her hands and do what she asks other people to do. When I went in and volunteered, I would sit the desk and ask some people the volunteers that would come in, and they'd look at me and I said, I don't ask you to do any more than what I will do myself. And she's been that way. She's been the example. But she shows love to these people, and her heart is in it. I've never seen any community leader, anyone else in all these organizations, and I've been to the other businesses. They do their part because there's funding behind them. Pastor does it, whether there's something or nothing. She does it for the people. And I believe, I don't know the board that's on there now, and it sounds like they've got a heart for it. But I know with the backing that Pastor does and the group that comes and volunteers, there's people from all over. I've met every denomination, I've met every type of people. And we work together, and most of us volunteers have gotten much more than what we give out. And it's not just the people receiving, it's us giving, but us receiving too. So I see a community growing, I see love. I seen yesterday an outreach that is beyond. The children are the youth that done a service, and it was awesome. I just stood in awe at all the people that are allowed to become real and move up in their lives. So I guess that's all I want to say. It's just an awesome place to be part of.
So are there other comments from those present? I think as we go through this list, what the council is looking for is the criteria in which we have to make our decision. We know everybody's passionate about one group, two groups, and maybe don't have as much familiarity with the other group. And we have data, or I should say we have information that's been provided by all that we see what the work is being done. What we're looking for assistance from those here is, what do you see as part of the criteria and how we make a decision? I understand the support for one organization or the other, but it's about what do you think is going to help us in making that decision beyond your, I guess, your involvement and support. Because there's a whole variety of criteria, I think, as well as considerations that go into this. Yes, sir, I think you stood up. Your comments and questions, please. Or comments, address. There's two, I see.
Good evening, Council. I'm Bill Saul. I'm from LaSalle, Michigan, 4080 Stein Road. I was mentioned by Mr. Pastu as a representative of the board of the Village Group. And I want to make a statement for that has taken us a while to get here, but we've done some extraordinary visionary talent, put a lot of visionary talent into a program to make this center a new viable center with very reliable and dedicated people working. We're looking at the probability of expanding out, building new programs, music and art programs, including theater. I just want to let you know what we wrote in our bylaws and what we wrote in the mission statement and our goals are absolutely true. We've got a lot of experience, over 100 years of experience in boards and commissions. I myself was on a school board for 18 years, and I kind of look at this as an opportunity, as we had when I started on a school board, to turn it around and make it a much better institution. We spent a lot of time making better things for kids. I lived my lifetime goal of helping kids. This is another opportunity to do that. And all the speakers that I heard today, they're all wonderful topics, and we're going to make it happen. I want to make sure that the boxing program continues. I want to make sure that the recreational programs continues, and most importantly, that we have good quality educational programs. Mr. Felix Hill was a leader in this program area, and he was, of course, not around now. Latia was there also to help with the programming, and we helped to put this whole program together. And we look forward to being the leaders for the Arthur Leslie Community Center. And so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Saul. Other comments? I think the gentleman standing, was next.
Lee Sharp, 5943 Roseland Avenue, Monroe. Tonight I stand before you not normally as I do as the president of the Monroe and Lenawee AFL-CIO Central Labor Council, but as now a new member of the ALCC board. As you know, I've got more than 10,000 members that hold me accountable for that which I do on their behalf. So I bring a diverse mentality and group to this new board. And the vision of this new board is expansive, not just in the program that's being currently run, but in the approach going forward and bringing diversity into that building, not just for the community that's down there, but for the rest of the community as well. But let's not lose focus on what's currently going on down there now. It's still very disrupted. There's still a lot of questions going on with the kids that are down there. And there's a very high level of concern about a break or suspension in availability of that center for those folks that are there. And what I hear tonight continues to cause that fear, because there are many questions about groups that don't have current 501c3s, umbrellas. And I got to commend Pastor Boone for her honesty and integrity as always. Every time I've ever dealt with her, she stands here tonight to offer to support that group or to step in their stead should that be needed. So as you go forward making your decision, keep in mind that this is a very diverse group that we currently elected this past week, and that each and every one of you ought to see that in action before you make your decision. Now, my hat's off to all of these groups that are here tonight as being those that would come forward to try to assist the kids that use that community center and the rest of the community at large. But keep in mind, this is a group that's been there 75 years, has retooled to go forward, and you should all see that before you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those? Yes. The back and then to the center. Thank you.
My name is Linda McFadden, and I live at 1810 Bayview Drive. What I want to say today is that what's the most important thing to me is the kids. I work there. I've been there for over 35 some years. And it's not about the money, it's about the love that I have for the community. So what I want to say today, whoever comes in, that the workers, I'm speaking on behalf of the workers that work there, we work diligent with our kids. We try to be there for them, try to have different programs also for them. So whoever comes in, I hope you have the compassion, the love, and I hope you not only be a part of us, but also come down and work with us. See how the kids react. You know, be a familiar face. Don't just be somebody who's want to be a part of us and don't be there to show you're present. So my main concern is basically because the kids are so confused right now because of the different changes that we have. So all I'm asking is when you come in, have the compassion of heart. Be willing to work. And not only work with the workers also. I don't know if you would keep us or not or whatever, but what I'm saying is I have a very compassionate heart about working with the kids at LCC or outside the community. So just have a compassionate heart, whoever you pick. Just make sure that if you come into our facility or into LCC, please come in to work. Be a volunteer. Be a familiar face. Be a counselor. Be a helper. You know, be a big figure. Be a mentor. So that's all I'm asking for. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Zorn-Kasperzak. I'm the Executive Director of MCOP. I'm from 1140 South Telegraph, or if you want my personal address, 5414 North Otter Creek in LaSalle. Thanks for this opportunity. And the reason why I love working in this community is all of this amazing passion in the room. I would never want to see that go away in this transition, if there is one. MCOP is the community action agency that services Monroe County. So we've been here for 53 years. We've been here for a very long time. And as a community action agency, our goal is to mobilize communities and reduce poverty by providing opportunities for self-sufficiency. So when this first came up, I didn't really think about coming in and taking over, as some people have said. I came in to help. And so I have worked very hard. And we have several board members here today and staff as well. So I just wanted to make mention of our board members and our staff who are here today. We said, what can we do to help? Because over the years, Councilwoman Vining, Omar back there will remember, Kate Ebley brought together a group of people to work on a neighborhood preservation project in the Orchard East neighborhood. MCOP was part of that. We've been providing programs and services at ALCC for many years, ranging from mobile food pantries, Bridges Out of Poverty classes, it runs the gamut. So we've been at ALCC, we've been at the center for a long time. When this came up, we talked to the ALCC board, we talked to the ALCC executive director. We really took a look at what was going on and what we could do to help. So we too, along with Pastor Boone, and I have to say, a few short years ago, we were the fiduciary for Pastor Boone and Oaks of Righteousness. So we do that because the strength of our organization at MCOP is, one, our board. We have a tripartite board, which means we have an equal representation from the public sector, private sector, and the consumer sector of our community. We're a countywide organization, but we work specifically in areas where there's concentrations of poverty. So when you talk about the needs, MCOP does a community needs assessment every 3 years. They're available on our website. But we know that the city of Monroe is the largest concentration of poverty. That's why it makes sense for us to be here tonight and for us to be here in this conversation. We've worked with the organization for a long time. We have a long-standing history in the community. And most importantly, our mission aligns with what is needed at the center. So I am really happy to be here to kind of talk about what we see as a vision. First and foremost, we have reached out, we've met with the ALCC board to provide some of our strengths to them. We're very happy to continue in that capacity working with that board for as long as possible. So even in talking about in the event that we went in to the center to operate it, we would like that to be for a period of time to see what the ALCC board can do to strengthen its operations, and we'll help them along the way. Because what our strengths are at MCOP, as I mentioned, we have an amazing board, a long-standing board, with great connections in the community and great partnerships. It's diverse. So we have the public sector, the private sector, the consumer sector all represented. We have a lot of long-standing members. We also have a lot of newer members. And what I'm very proud of over the last few years at MCOP is we've diversified our funding. Where when I came to the organization, we were 75% dependent on the federal government. And no one in this room has heard that the federal government doesn't have its ups and downs, and we've been through those. So we diversified funding to now where we were under 50%, about 43% dedicated to, dependent on federal funds. So we have really diversified our funding. And we haven't done that through other federal funds or state funds. We've done that from the local community, through private foundations, for being aggressive in grant writing, fundraising, bringing in individual donations, and cultivating individual donors. So we know how to diversify funds. We're also an organization that's nimble enough to where if funding got pulled because of something like DTE, we would be able to continue operations because we know how to pull in the resources to make it happen. But let me talk for a minute about the resources that we could bring in immediately into the center if we were asked. We have a commodity supplemental food program for seniors. We serve 500 seniors every month. We could bring a commodity supplemental food program right into the center. We've done mobile food pantries at the center for many years. We would continue in that capacity. We can do emergency food box distribution so that anybody in the community, anyone in the neighborhood came in and they needed emergency food, we could provide it. We've had Fresh Opportunity Market at the center for many years and we'll continue. It's a grab and go so that the kids who come to the center need a fast snack, they can get it. Our senior programs are top notch. MCOP has senior resource advocacy, which means any senior in Monroe County can come and get information and referral to other organizations or to services that we provide. We do MAP counseling, so any senior and all seniors have insurance, and we want to make sure that they're in the best plans possible so it doesn't eat through their pocketbook. They get the prescriptions that they need to remain healthy. We have a full range transportation program. We provide specialized transportation throughout Monroe County to Monroe County residents, but we travel the region. We do financial literacy classes. We have homebuyer education classes, rental assistance classes. We work with people who are homeless. We work with people who want to become homeowners and they need a method to get there. We can provide that. We also recently took over the Fix program. So there's a number of applications and services that we can bring to the center where people will have access to getting the Fix program, our weatherization program, utility assistance, rental assistance, senior services, and also connecting them to visits at our Lord's Harvest Pantry on Telegraph Road. What we can't do, I'm 100% sure we have a partner that we can bring in to do it for us. So at the very beginning, we thought, well, we're not a recreation program. So if what they're looking for is a recreation program, we're probably not the right fit. But we work with the YMCA. We work with the Monroe Center for Healthy Aging. We've worked with the City Parks and Rec Department before. We can bring those partners in to continue to provide that service, to make sure that there's continuation of the good services that are already existing at the center. We've had considerable discussion about staffing because in going through all of this due diligence and talking to people, clearly the staff at ALCC has great passion for the kids, for the seniors, for the neighborhood, for doing the good work that they're doing every day. We would be highly sensitive. We're a union. We have a union at MCOP. We've had some discussions about a really nice transition so that staff who could remain in place would easily, become an MCOP employee where we have good salary, good benefits, good vacation leave, so that people can really have a great transition. And we would be there because we're already there. And I don't want people to forget that, because when I hear that perhaps we're seen as an outsider, we certainly are not. We've been a community action agency here for 53 years. We have worked at the center. And we'll continue to work with the great people who have such great passion for what they're doing. We are also a United Way agency, and we work with the Commission on Aging. So I know those are two funding sources that provide funding to the center. As Connie mentioned, there's no guarantee that that follows, but it does prove to you all who will be making this decision that we have the transparency. We know the reporting methods. We know the outcomes and measurements that are needed to be compliant, fully compliant with both of those funding sources and more. And then our financial health. MCOP leverages between $3.5 and $3.8 million every year bringing that money back in the community. We're an economic engine. We keep that money right here in Monroe County. And we have had numerous audits, years after years of audits. We have no findings. We are a tight ship. And what I love about our organization is that we're highly efficient. So our administration costs last year, our overall general and management and general costs, 7%. And even our auditor said you do not find that in other organizations. So not only do we provide the breadth of services that you probably are looking for, we are also very lean in how we do it and very efficient. Because like I said, if there's something we don't do, we find a partner who'll come in and do it. And there won't be a cost associated. We'll bring in partnerships and they'll bring in the expertise that, they do. But in the end, it's all about the mission. Our mission is to reduce poverty, improve the quality of life, and promote self-sufficiency. So when you think about that mission as it relates to ALCC, I think there's a fit. I think we are a solid organization, a strong organization, a financially healthy organization. We're extremely compassionate. We understand the needs of people in poverty, our seniors, the kids. We're going to be very sensitive to that. And we run a tight ship. So I believe in our leadership, and I've probably wasted way more than 3 minutes, so I apologize for that. But, we're happy to take any questions. And again, we have staff and board here, but just wanted to make sure you all got our perspective on why we're here. And in the end, if just as Pastor Boone said, if the decision is to continue working with the ALCC board, we'll help. We'll provide technical assistance. We'll work with Aaron and the team. And if not, we'll be here and provide the services that we're already providing and do a darn good job doing it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Other final comments from those present? Yes, sir.
Forte, 328 East 8th Street, Monroe. And what I want to say is that I just want us to make the best decision for the community and for these kids. I always say when I wake up in the morning and I leave my home on my way to the college, there are two things I think about. How will my decisions impact my students, and how will my decisions impact my community? That's it. If it's about Kojo, I leave it at home. And I have a relationship with the ALCC. Some may know this, some may not know this, but twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, I go there at 5 o'clock and I tutor those kids at the center. Ms. Vining, you know this. Twice a week, I leave my office and I go there and I tutor those kids there. So it's about the kids. In economic terms, we talk about decisions. For every problem, there are numerous solutions, a myriad feasible solutions, and only one optimal feasible solution. So, as you think about this, I encourage you to think about come up with the optimal feasible solution. What will best serve our community and what will best serve those kids? And I am involved hands-on with those kids at the center. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, ma'am.
Mary Epps, Monroe, Michigan, 1018 East 2nd Street. Never do this, but here we go. I believe in having a strong foundation in leadership. You have to have the heart. You have to have the mentality. In the midnight hour, people come at the doors in the midnight hour asking for a food box. Are you willing to get up out your bed? Are you willing to sacrifice your time, your gifts, your talents to help those less fortunate? It's not always about the money. I've seen Oaks provide with the minimal funding that we do have. I've seen Manna and Quell come in each and every day. There's not been a day that I've seen us go without. It's always been a provision there. And with the change in the DTE funding, I believe that Oaks can sustain. I do believe that they have a great relationship with the center, and I really commend Pastor Boone, the fact that she's willing to step aside to continue to let the community the staff continue their great works, because I'm a 90s baby, and I've seen a lot of things happen, and I've seen things change, and I don't want to regret this decision. I don't want to look back and regret. I don't want this work to be in vain that they've, paved the way for. So just be mindful of your decision, and please have an open heart. And that's all I can say.
Thanks, Ms. Epps. Other final comments from those present? And we'll see if there's other, yes, ma'am.
My name is Wendy Meyer. I'm from Carlton, 11530 Jones Road. It was kind of hard for me to get up here. Don't know where to begin, to tell you the honest truth. I work for Life, the Meals on Wheels program. I was over at the center for probably a good 10 years. I worked with Jan over there for a long time. Worked with Tanya when she was there for a long time. And I do admit, I do not want to see the center closed. They do great things for the kids. But we did leave there. I know Aaron got up here and said about the board. I dealt with Aaron.
Wendy, this way.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I've never done this before. I've
Just
dealt
clarity,
with Aaron.
nobody here has said about closing the
I'm
center.
sorry, what?
Nobody here has said about closing the center, so that's
Oh,
never been
I
in the
understand
discussion.
that.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
now. Yeah,
All right,
I
please
just want to let
continue.
them know it's a great,
Okay.
great thing. Now we're over at the Oaks with Pastor Boone. Love it there. Our seniors are so welcomed there. I will admit, at the center, we had meetings with the board. My seniors came, voiced their concerns about the way we were treated there, and even met with Aaron. Nothing was resolved. I would like to see change at the center. He says he does have some new board members. Maybe they can change, but you do need to have change over there. My numbers have went up tremendously. I was down to maybe one or two people, seniors, coming there and eating when we were there at the center. They didn't want to come there anymore. They were refused to turn the air on over there for people who had COPD. We contributed to the rent. I wish I would have came earlier and spoke about how I felt, but I didn't. I stayed away. We were told their bills were high, but didn't turn it on for the seniors. We did contribute to rent to the senior, for the ALCC board, the center. So that's why we chose to leave. When Pastor Boone opened up, we even was going to go over to where they had the homeless shelter there to get out of the center. But there was little stairs and things, but we were going to put a ramp, but we decided wait to see if she got St. Joe's. Because it's so hard for us to change addresses, to go somewhere else. We had to get the okay through the board, through Area Agency on Aging, to do all this. Like I said, my numbers are up. Everyone at Oaks makes all my seniors and me feel like a family. They love going there. Everyone says hi, no matter what. Hi, how you doing? They call you by name. I didn't get that at the center. Okay, neither did my seniors. Okay, so I would really, really love to see a huge change of that, where everybody feels welcome there, because you sure feel welcome over at the Oaks. They all pitch in if you need any help. They're there. They're a family. I used to work at MCOP years ago in the 80s. I used to be an outreach worker. I did home care. I know about MCOP. Yes, wonderful organization. I don't want to say anything. I just hope they're not too big. We need somebody that knows the area. They do food boxes. I see the stuff that they do over there at Oaks every day, constantly running, helping people. The food drives that they do. They have the food gives away. And it seems like when you need something, it comes in. I've seen wonderful things over there. And I've even started to go over to church over there and stuff because I wanted to see what it was like. And I love it. I really love it. So I hope you take them in consideration and things. But my main concern too is the kids. I know the kids in the neighborhood or even everywhere else, they need a place to go to come to. But that's all I got to say. I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Final count, yes.
Sandy Lipstor, 560 Toll Street, and I'm a retired nurse, and I volunteered at Oaks for about 4 years now. And as Wendy said, we do so many things, but just this past weekend, we did a health fair that involved such community collaboration. I mean, if you're talking about community collaboration, that's one thing that Oaks is very good at. You know, I don't know that much about the other organizations. I only know that Pastor Boone doesn't fail when she takes on a project. She's blessed and highly favored. So if you chose to go with her, she would be able to do that job. But there is so much that goes on at Oaks between, like she said, the seniors. I would love to see more senior programming at the center. That would just be, I mean, I'm a senior. I would love to see that. We have, you know, AA meetings. We have anybody wants a meeting for any reason, that place is open for that meeting. And I do think it is important to remember to that even though the center is for the whole city of Monroe, the center is located in the east side of town, and there's a culture in the east side of town. And that's the big word in nursing, you know, cultural competence. That's, I'm in the mental health board, that's the big word, cultural competence. People need to be competent in the culture of the community if they're going to be successful in their endeavors in the community. So, you know, it would just be nice if you would keep that in mind, that that people need to, they need to feel comfortable with the people that come in there to work with them.
Thank you. Yes.
Kim Ruiz, 1149 Handy Drive, Monroe, Michigan. So I wasn't going to say anything because, you know, I'm a talker. Do I need to speak up? Okay. So I'm sitting here listening to all of these organizations talk. And in my head, I'm a collaborator. You know, I have utilized several services in this county for myself to grow as an individual and to provide as a single mom to my children. Yes, I worked at Monroe County Opportunity for several years, and I bring with me lots of tools that I gained while I was there, and also utilizing the services while I was there. And I left there to go over to Oaks so I could help individuals as a whole. And as I've been moving forward in my own career, the more and more I get is about the collaboration. And so no matter what your decision is, it is about relationships. And whoever goes over there to participate with that needs to think about the trust issue that individuals are going to have. Now, yes, I did not grow up in the east end of town, and yes, it hasn't been the easiest for me sometimes, but I don't have a view of that. I am there to give a commitment of working with individuals to see them grow. Because once the individuals grow, which is all what you guys are talking about, you want to give something to children. The children need to be able to see their parents growing as well. Mayor, you said something about the child that said that about the chef. I taught a class that I heard an individual that said, I want to be a chef. A grown adult said, when I was young, I watched these individuals out here selling drugs, brand new shoes, money. That's all my vision was, he said. But today he's like, I would like to go back. And that's what I did, encouraged him to go to the college because of the culinary. But the children, as you guys are talking about, they need to be able to see these parents grow. So you need to think about that relationship as well, to connect with the parents, because once the children see their parents growing, that's what's going to grow. And that's what's going to enhance our community as a whole if you want to see this community change. Yes, it is about the children. We want to see some generational things change. But think about the parents that have been going through things that have not had the hope as well. So if you're going to go in there, you've got to establish a relationship with them. And it's not the easiest thing to do. So I just want to thank you and, for listening to me, but collaboration, if we can collaborate together, no matter what your decision is, to become a whole, then I think that would be a great thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Kayla.
It looked like somebody else wants to speak. We'll take another, and then I think there's opportunity for council if there's any comments they may have or further discussion. Yes, sir.
Isaac Smith, 1916 Elkton Drive. I've heard a lot of comments tonight, and one thing I think I hear from you, Mr. Mayor, is you're looking not only for good organizations, but you're looking for a good foundation for whoever's going to be leading the community center. And I've listened to the comments about the village and also about MCOP. And one thing I came to realize is that with those two organizations, they are looking at the community center from the outside in the eyes that they see maybe the needs of the community center and what needs to be done for the community. And what I've seen from in here and experienced from Oaks of Righteousness is an organization and a group of caring individuals who looks at the needs of the community center from the inside out. And what happens in the fear that I think a lot of people here have tonight is that the council wanted to take over the community center or something to that nature. And I think there's a very thin line between caring and controlling. And I think sometimes when we hear about changes, changes is not something that's well received. No one likes change, but it's inevitable. I think that the foundation for the chairman of the board of directors for the community center now is the foundation is not there. I think that that there's training needed, and I was just looking back and when I was coming to the community center and lived there. I grew up there. It raised me. It was parent when my parents was not there. But it was a community, and it takes the community to raise individuals sometimes, and it's the community center is Orchard East. It is the heartbeat, like someone said before. It is, and it's always been that way. I think that Oaks of Righteousness has transparency, and I think that's why they're successful. And Oaks of Righteousness, I think that's Isaiah 61 verse 3. And that has some meaning because they're rooted on the east side of Monroe. It's as you've heard tonight, an organization, a family that is well received, and all these entities work well with them. I think the group has gravitated to Pastor Boone and the passion, and she has a passion for compassion, and my interactions with her has been great. I remember when she first came here as a warming center. We talk about that a little bit, and just go back to how it originally started. And she has not looked back. I mean, it has just grown and has evolved through her willingness to not just change, but to embrace the ideas of others. And I think that that's one of the great things about her is that she realizes she doesn't know everything, and she brings in those who do. I think that that's what your mission is now, is to have a say in how this is ran, and to entrust funds with somebody that you know that is going to be responsible and accountable to those, and which they should. Me being a part of a 501c3 is created, and know that how the accounting goes and how diligent you have to be in recording the assets and how you distribute the funds. You want somebody who has experience with that also. With respect to the village and also with MCOP, I've not dealt with the village before, but also I have with MCOP on several occasions with Brandon Roof. I've interacted with United Way with Connie Carroll in several projects. But to me, that and having been through the and grown through the ALCC, I think the Oaks was probably the best choice. They are the most. They help everyone. I mean, I don't think I've heard anyone say that the doors have been closed to someone who has come to Oaks of Righteousness, regardless of what the concern may be. But more than that, it's a trust factor, and I think that trusting in someone that you may not be familiar with, or organization that they may not can understand the needs of the community or the people there, and I just think that we need someone who's already rooted, who's already someone who's accountable, someone in the community who has embraced, and someone I think that has a passion to not only grow but to see, and as a young man and an individual that grew up, you want to look at life through, from the inside out. I want to see what I could be. The opportunities are there. It was great to have United Way to come through, and it was great to have the food baskets from the Salvation Army. But to live there and to experience and have the hope and the opportunity, and I think you can have one without the other. If you're going to have hope, you got to have opportunity also. The programs she's brought there to the east side of Monroe, and also to Monroe County in general. They're talking about the health clinic that took place this past weekend, and I had seen a young man who was involved with that that I go to church with, Nicholas, and he was telling me how excited he was to be a part of that. I think it's the 9th year that they've put that program on. But I think those are the situations and those are the programs that are needed to grow the community, to raise individuals, to help families, to help parents, and to have someone that you can go and you can talk to, or you know that you're going to get an answer or direction to resolve the problems that you do have. I think the one thing I love about the Oaks of Righteousness and that organization is they're problem solvers, they're not problem pushers. And I think there's a difference between the two. We wanted to solve the problems, not to push them off to another organization or someone else. And I think that would be the best choice, not only for the east side of Monroe, but for Monroe in general. It's the best choice, I think, for the city council. I think it's the best choice for the city manager, and the best option for us to grow as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I think I'll see if there's any final comments from the council, or as we move forward. I'll start here and then we can move forward. Any comments? Councilman Wilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I think every one of these groups could bring great assets to the ALCC, to the center. Which one brings the most and is willing to collaborate with the rest to ensure a long-standing center will be in place to provide our city residents is the big question that we have to answer up here. And that's basically the way I'm going to respond with how I decide which way I want to, which group I think would be the most amicable to handle the center. So I think the big word here tonight has been collaboration. And I think that's what needs to be done here. in order to put this back in focus and make sure that the main thing is taken care of, and it's the kids of the community. Not just the other side of the tracks, the whole community, the whole city of Monroe. What is the best answer for our city and our residents? So that's the way I look at this.
Councilwoman Germaini?
I think there are a lot of parents that are afraid to ask for help, and we need to choose an organization that will entrust these parents to come and ask for help so that we can help the kids. And that's what I want to think about. Thank you.
Other council comments? Councilman Michelangelo?
Your Honor, I apologize for being late. I had a nonprofit board meeting in Mount Pleasant. We meet twice a year, and it didn't get done until about 3:45, so I apologize. I read through the packet, and I don't want to belabor the decision-making process because that continues the whole atmosphere of confusion. So I'm going to throw this out to the council and to the community. Of course, many people know that I'm not afraid to speak my mind, and I just kind of move forward. But I will tell the community I don't like buying the same real estate twice, and you'll know why in a minute. I have no interest in the city of Monroe or the city commission taking over the operation of the community center. The community center was set up as a neighborhood-based center to improve the quality of life of people primarily in the Orchard area. That's been the mission from day one. I can remember when I was in 6th grade being there when Vice President Humphrey came to do the dedication. All right? And the reason why the city was given that money by the federal government was because of the efforts that were made by the city and the ALCC board over the years on trying to provide a community-based organization. So with that said, I have no interest in the city being involved in the ALCC, which gets rid of two of the 6 options. I appreciate Mr. Saul's effort to step up and provide an organizational structure for the ALCC board, but that is, at this juncture, I don't think we can take the risk of starting with a whole new organization. So as far as I'm concerned, the village group is out of the running. Relative to the ALCC board, and this is where I don't buy real estate twice, is that, and no offense to Mr. Lavender, I appreciate the fact that he stepped back up to be chairman, but this entire process started with the city council 3 years ago when Aaron was the chairman, and we started the strategic planning process. And it just did not go anywhere. My feeling is the reason why the Oaks has been so well received in the Orchard area is because they're filling a gap or a void that has not been filled by the ALCC board over the last 10 years. So as the services dwindled at the ALCC board, they've been picked up by other organizations. So with that said, I have no interest in continuing any further deliberations or negotiations with the ALCC board, which leaves us to 2, the Oaks and MCOP. And although we received proposals from both, my recommendation to council is this. I want to have the opportunity to actually do some reference checks on both organizations. I want to find out what their financial capabilities are. I want to find out what other funders in the community actually think about them. So my suggestion to council is that we form a committee of a couple of people on council, a couple council people, the mayor, city manager, and basically we interview both Oaks and MCOP in more detail, and then we also do some background due diligence and some reference checks, and then we come back with a recommendation to the full city council board. And we do that as expeditiously as possible. that's kind of what my observations are, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Vining.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm getting the idea that there's a consensus, a general consensus with the council that it is going to come down to Oaks and MCOP. But I also appreciate the efforts in the last couple weeks of the ALCC, and I know you guys are working hard to put together a new board. I'm still not sure, if the city is not working with you where you want to go with that. But I did have a couple questions. I don't know if you'll be able to answer them tonight, but we can talk later, Aaron, if that's possible.
I think if there's questions with any of the entities, I would prefer the city manager send those because he can deliver, I'll say, receive the information and then has the opportunity to disseminate it to the council as a whole.
So
Go ahead.
Should I send those questions to the city manager, Your Honor, and not ask them this evening? I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Or we
my
wanna do
thought
it?
is because I have questions also, and I think if I don't want to sit here and try to have questions for one organization or another. I'm going to provide some of my thoughts in a broad perspective. I may have some follow-ups I'll be asking the city manager to do. And my thought is that because if we individually, then everybody's not part of the discussion, everybody's not part of the answer. If you're not in the forum when it's done, you may not know the relationship and when it was provided. But I think it's a great idea if there's, Councilman Michelangelo provided some of his thoughts right out. And I think that if there's some, you can say what the questions are because then everybody know what they are, but I would ask from that, then Mr. Pastu would follow up with it. But you're more than welcome, Councilwoman, to provide what you think are some of the questions. I have some questions too.
So I'm going to follow the mayor's lead, and I'm going to put those questions to the city manager so that he can ask them. But one of the main lines of questioning that I have is about your future funding. I know we can say we can write some grants, but as a grant writer myself, I know that that can be a detailed process and a time sensitive process. So of course, we're here trying to move forward quickly. So that most of my funding for ALCC has to revolves around funding or what your ideas are with that. And I like the councilman's idea of when we come down to which groups we want to work with, of doing the interview process. I like that idea. So I'll reserve everything else for future conversation if we're going to go that way. I agree with the councilman's suggestion.
Councilman Whitman, thank you.
I just want to say that it was it's one thing to sit here and read all the information that you've been given. And it's a completely different thing to sit here and see how passionate that everyone feels. And to still keep in mind that we have to do what's right for the city, for the community center, for all the people involved. And it's not an easy decision. It's not like we have a favorite. We have to, and it's not like it just started recently. This started when I first got on city council, and we went down and helped the center work on their strategic planning, and they set up goals. And, so we've been working on this for a long time. And I hate to even bring it up, but I relate this to the ice rink. That if, we don't want to let it go until it's too late, or that we can't come up with a solution and that closing it is the only thing to do. As far as we're all concerned, we are united in the fact that this center is not closing. We are trying to do what's best for, for the community and for the center itself. So, but hearing everyone speak it's definitely some food for thought.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Vining.
Thank you. I want to say this, and I came here. I used to spend a lot of time in the chambers before I was ever a council person. I'm sort of nosy, so I like to know what's going on in the community. One thing I said to the mayor, he may not remember, many, many years ago, and I want to reiterate it here tonight. As the east side goes, so goes the rest of the city of Monroe. I don't think at that time, that was pre-heroin epidemic, pre recession cuts, all that when I said that. And then I watched the things that have been put upon the east side for so many years. I watched them creep out into the rest of the city. One of the things that I always refused to say, and I hear it a lot in the city, in the chambers, down there. I want to point out to everybody, the only way you can enter the city of Monroe proper is through the east side. So we are actually not down there. You could say over there, up there, over east, but you can't really say down there because we're actually the entrance to the city proper. Anywhere else you want to come into the city, any other freeway exit, you're going to be in somebody's township. So also with the development of the battlefield, with the labor park investments, with the upcoming, hopefully soon, Winchester corridor developments and the heritage, the master, I always say this wrong,
You got
the
it.
Heritage Plan East master plan. There's so much potential in that area. I think we need to stop viewing it as down there. Sometimes, always, words carry a lot of spirit and a lot of weight. And we've, as a community, have labeled the East Side for generations and generations. To hear people say, I've been afraid to come down there and all that, it always makes me laugh because I was raised in Wayne County in Detroit and the city of Inkster. I actually literally moved to Monroe because I got tired of seeing and hearing people get shot in their head every weekend. And that's not an exaggeration. So the people of the city of Monroe, you do not know how great you have it with, I know there's, with the heroin epidemic, property crime has come up and everything, but I just want to say that as the east side goes, so goes the rest of the city. Do not think that those imaginary lines can contain the troubles that we'll see. And that was many years ago. I said that to the mayor, and now here we are, and it happened. So I just want us to start looking at the east side as part of the city and not a separate thing. And let's stop calling it down there or the end of a thing. And I know that might have been a little bit off subject, but not really. Maybe you'll catch it later. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Any other comments from council? I think they all spoke. So I guess I'll make some comments because as I kind of think through this process and, I'm not at the point where I'm simply, optioning out organizations. I appreciate Councilman Michael Lynch. I think it's very thoughtful in the process that he went. I'm kind of doing it the same way in my head as I look through those, maybe a little different process. I will say that I think it's pretty much from the onset of this meeting that we've recognized the city's not an option. I don't know if everybody heard that at the beginning or not, but the reason it's in here because people asked about it. Therefore, they pretty much ruled out the city's probably not the location which the oversight should be for the many reasons that were stated. And I don't support the city stepping in. I don't think the city's looking to control the ALCC or take over what the operations in the day-to-day are because I don't think it's a role that we'd probably play well in because you're going to require the partnership of the community and the entire community, but also those living there and those participating, those are providing services and where they may come from. So that's easy to me for the first two that I don't see. I look at it and I start to go through a process, and then that's kind of like not just sort of the matrix, but a checklist. And I look at that and say, who does or who doesn't? Who have we operated with, or who has operated with others? And I think that's that partnership and collaboration, and I think that's critically important. I think we've had some challenges over the last year or so with the organizational structure and reporting and information and how do we account for everything. So to me, that's a critical component when I look at the entities and where they are with that. I also look at it and say, some of the continuation of operations to date. And while we appreciate all that have an interest, it's like anything else. A startup is going to have that challenge. It would be, I guess, evaluated lesser for me, not because they're not good people, not because they don't have value, not that they haven't done it elsewhere, but we're also talking about what are we doing in relationship to this type of structure that we're looking at. So I think that's one part of it, and I think that's critically important. So you look at the day-to-day operations and the programs, and I think that while some of the organizational problems there were before, some of the programs did provide students and youth opportunities. We had some challenges with the senior program, and I think that that needs to be strengthened as well. So who provides those services? So as I go through these, I'm going to look at each individual part of it. And you can say that I'm sitting here whittling it down and can maybe think that where I'm sitting on organizations that provide those services. But in the end, I think there's also the opportunity of how those services are shared. And whether it be existing or two that have a long standing of operating in a 501c capacity. I think Councilman Michelangelo also stated, which I agree, we also have to look at, and this may work slides to, how do we vet this? How do we ensure that what we're going to support, what we're going to tell the community that we need to support, that we're going to say is the best selection for the ALCC? And that is part of the partnerships that are establishing outside this, not outside the city proper, but outside a city relationship, and see what those organizations are doing and what their commitment's going to be to that in the future as we go forward. The financial awareness and the financial, I think it was said by somebody about the transparency and information. We're a government entity, and we're required to make sure that's a component of what we do at the center and how it gets shown. And I think that's critically important. And I have to think that the entire community as a whole supports the base of funding for the ALCC. So the entire community as a whole has a voice in how we move forward. And while it is important that we're taking care of our neighborhood and taking care of the community center and having the history and knowledge of how we got there, but I also think that there's opportunities to expand not only what we do at the center, but the opportunities for those to come to the center and opportunities for those at the center to go elsewhere in the city and outside for programs. And I won't get into the long list that I've shared over the years that I think of that are right in front of us that may be free. It may be simply a partnership we've not done. And I want to see where the organizations, as I look at each of them, where have you already done that outside what is your core mission? Because everybody, as I look at the, I'll say three of the entities, because the other, I'd have to go back and see what they did elsewhere. So I'll start with the three, whether it's the ALCC, the Oaks, or MCOP. You all have a core function, and you also grow out into other functions. But how does that happen, and who does it happen with? Because I heard a lot about support. I heard a lot about partnership. And I'm not opposed to getting to a point where the, I don't know if it's a committee. I think the city manager is going to get something from this evening to think how he comes back to council in a structure that might get us to the next step, which is I do believe we need, as Councilman Michelangelo said, we do need to vet what the other information is that's not right before us. All passionate. I appreciate that, and I think that's great because you should be passionate for the cause that you're involved with, the passion for the center as a whole, but our community as a whole as well. So I'm going to I think I'll stop there because I think there is some due diligence that we have to also check through so we're not missing something in relation to not having enough knowledge. And I don't take my words wrong, of going to find something. That's not what it's about. It's doing our due diligence to make sure we have a full information so we are informed decision makers with all the facts that we know. So that's kind of where I am, and I don't know if that helps Mr. Pastou or not. I've heard from the council that it's not an issue for the city to embrace or take on, but I think that there's some options within there, and I think from the committee standpoint, I think that's where I'll leave that to the city administration and city manager to go back and say, here's what his recommendations may be as far as following through in a line that Councilman Michael just said, Councilwoman Vining seemed to support, and I think I heard somewhere else about that, because I think there is some next steps to be done, but it's got to be done quickly, because we do have a timeline to get this in order to deliver service for our community and through the ALCC. Mr. Pastu, any comments or questions for us?
Yeah, I could have a
Sure.
couple if there was any more other thoughts from city council on that.
Let's see if there's any final comments. Councilman Michelangeli.
Your Honor, as part of this process, I think the city council, at least tonight, in order to give the city manager some guidance, we need to really narrow the field down. So for two reasons. One, so the city manager and the administration can focus on pulling together information that we need as part of the due diligence. And then secondly, the organizations that are not going to be in the running, that way they don't have to spend their wheels on doing other things. You know what I mean? I mean, I think we owe it to them as well as part of this process, unless we want to interview everybody, but I'm not really inclined. We already said the city's off the table. So we have 4, ALCC Board, Oaks, MCOP, and the Village Group. And I guess the question is, out of the 4, I would hope that maybe council, either you want to interview all 4 or you want to narrow it down to 3 or 2. But we should give the city manager some idea of who the short list is going to be.
Okay. Councilman Moore.
Yeah, you're all right. I believe there's one entity that we did not hear from at all, is the Salvation Army.
I guess as we talked about, that did come up earlier, that there was at least a contact. I'm sure that the city manager will get back with them if there's information that they provide. And city manager, I think, believes it fits within the conversation of tonight to this point. I would leave that to the administration to at least provide back a response to the council in his a recommendation where that is something to consider in the future. But to me, that's outside today, but it is something that was at least mentioned, and his follow-up will then come back whether he thinks that's a role and fits or not. Because there was others that, there was one other that called that they're not here either, and that's rightly so, because I don't think there's not the overall fit, so to speak. And I think they realize that the strength falls with a smaller portion of it. Councilman, I just want to make a comment. I might have said it, and I'll make sure I did this time. But I look at the 3 of the entities that I think either have past experience or experience in operations and a structure. And again, that's what we need to figure out in the next step. But I also think that doesn't negate the possibility of having that conversation of where there may be a partnership role between one entity or another, because as we all heard, there are strengths and there are weaknesses, if you want to say it that way, greater strengths and not regular strengths about what your focus and primary role may be. And I think I can just, as I go through the list, and I was thinking about it as we're hearing conversation, but also reading, is, there are strengths that will, for some that will rise another. And is there somebody that in a partnership that fits the overall role? I don't know, but I don't know that the organizations would be agreeable with that, though I did hear they were supportive of people here within within those groups. So I guess if you're talking about a short list, I guess it's a number you're looking at, whether it be 2 or 3, but I'm comfortable with either one. Mr. Pastu, what is your pleasure? Or what is your thought? I should say, it's not your pleasure, but your thought.
Well, that's a loaded question.
Well, I guess the better way, when you're moving forward, I mean, is there a...
It's either one is fine with me, Your Honor. If you want to do 2 or 3 interviews, I think I'm perfectly fine with that. I would like to know of the council who's all interested. We could always post it as there's more than a quorum, then we can always post it for an open meeting. And then I think also part of me just, may even have a pre-meeting before the interviews. Let's go through. Here's the questions. Those that have been
Right.
involved with me interviewing in the past, you're going to get, pretty intense structure of questions that you're going to have to go through. I want to make sure everybody would be fine with that if that's in fact the case. So, but I think a starting point, who's all interested? I mean, if the entire council is interested, that's fine. We can post it, and then I can get you some questions based on some of the feedback I get from you and some of the things actually I heard tonight. Regarding like continuity of services. We talked about the boxing program and how do you go about handling those type of things are, I think critically important to the community. And so.
Okay. You'll probably have everybody on council interested.
I'm not sure that's a bad thing, to be honest with you.
And I think it's.
Let me just comment on
Yes,
that.
Councilman.
I do, because I think the type of questions that we need to ask are not going to be asked at a public venue. Okay? They need to be asked in a committee session, very pointed, direct questions. Okay? Because the last time that we did this, we were criticized that we were basically airing laundry in the public and embarrassing people. So let's learn from our previous mistakes, and let's do it within a committee. And let's just be comfortable with the people that we put on the committee that are going to bring back an honest evaluation. And, I would say, because of the relevance of this decision, the mayor needs to be on the committee along with 2 other council people. So whoever wants to volunteer, let's volunteer. I think Kelly already wants to be on it. Brian's got his hand up. Michelle wants to be on it. That's 4.
Again, I would love to be involved. I take your point about wanting it to be closed, but I mean, if we're all in, we have the same issue again.
Well, no, I think we just have to, the council has to basically decide who should be on the committee. I think the committee needs to have a candid conversation with any of the applicants outside of a public discussion, because it can get uncomfortable. All right? And I'm comfortable with anybody on council being on the committee, knowing that everybody's going to do their job and come back with a recommendation. I don't have to be on the committee. In fact, I don't want to be on the committee. All right? Because I've already got some bias with one of, if we're going with 3 organizations, I've already got a bias with one of them. All right? So I don't want to be on the committee. So I would prefer actually council people that are not involved in any of the organizations being the ones that are on the committee to make sure that there's no bias in the selection process.
Yeah.
Councilman Vining.
I think we all have some level of choice that we would prefer. I think who on the council doesn't have some bias. I don't know if everybody will say that they have some level of bias, but I think everyone has an idea of who they would like to see, or at least the top 2, and that's why we want to do our due diligence to make that decision.
If I could offer, because I'm not going to be on the committee, but if I can offer some guidelines to council, take a look at the skill sets that you currently have on council. Andrew, you're an analyst, fiscal analyst. Brian's a small business owner. Michelle works for a authority, a tax entity authority as one of their managers. Kelly's at the library. Paula runs a nonprofit. So we have people up here that are involved in various aspects of running an organization. So I think the skill sets are here. And maybe the approach is having somebody on the committee that is from a nonprofit or authority versus somebody, you guys are on the private sector. One of you 2 guys is either being a small business owner or an analyst for Ford Motor, to bring that perspective. And then you have the mayor. as part of his responsibility. And I think you got a good mix on a committee. So, and my suggestion is, and I'm only going to throw this out publicly, is Kelly, I'm just throwing this out as advice, is that if you're on the committee, you're going to lose whoever comes out, whatever organization is selected, one of the other two are going to be upset with you personally because you're down in the neighborhood. And if I were you, I would remove myself from that process. I would give the questions that you want to ask to the manager, but you're in a no-win position. And I think you have to, hopefully you understand that.
I have to agree. It wouldn't be. I have to agree with that. I thought that they were going to run somebody against John, but he's running unopposed. But no, seriously, no, I have to agree that somebody's going to be upset with me, but that's nothing new. That's been since the 6 years I've been on council. I've had to make tough decisions, and the people in the neighborhood have been upset. I can kind of see where you're coming from because I actually, as Stephanie stated, I've worked personally with MCOP in the grant writing process, and as a young mother, received services through MCOP. Of course, I've worked with the community center for probably the 19 years I've been here, and I've worked with Oaks for the 10 or so years that they've been here. So you could look at it as I have a unique insight into all three agencies. So it depends on how you want to spin it, I guess. If I'm not on the committee, I have full confidence in the council because every other former committee that you all have formed to hire people or things like that, you guys always have come back and given the council a really clear, idea of what you want to do and what your recommendation is. Again, I have full confidence in the city manager and the entire council in their abilities to, but I think that I will be an important voice just because I think I do have probably the most unique insight into the entire process. So I'd be willing to admit that I might have a couple top two favorites, but either way, I don't have to be on the committee. I know I'll get the information. So either way, it doesn't really matter to me.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to maybe move this forward, but I think let's just start with the questions. I think is the start point. I think council has the opportunity to weigh in on what those questions are going to be, and I think that's maybe the foundation of most important is knowing what questions are going to be asked and be confident that the committee that's formed and with the city manager's message about the discussion is going to provide those responses to the council members that don't sit on the committee to understand and maybe provide some background of whatever the recommendation is as it comes to a close. So I think that's the most important part is the start, that each council member knows what the questions are going to be and why those are being asked and why it's important. So that's my first thought for the city manager. Next comes to forming the committee, and we've had some, I think if we all talked it through, we've had some informal relationship or another, meaning that we've all been here for a while. And it may be in our personal life, it might be in the city life. So then it comes down to when these are going to occur and availability, because we've, make sure that fits as well. I think, and the councilman says, there are different functions, different roles for all the council members. Everybody serves on board and commission, either as on a board or as a liaison. There are duties in the charter that have the responsibilities of the mayor, and it's the mayor's title or seat versus necessarily the person. That's why I'm here currently, and I guess I would like to serve on the committee because the questions that the council has and is going to supply is the questions that I'd be comfortable in delivering no matter what they are. because we need to get the answers no matter what they are, so we can make a decision for the best for the community. So looking at the remaining council members, I would ask that as you think that through yourselves, not only knowing that whatever is decided is going to have that weigh in, there's still the vote that comes at the conclusion of how we're going to move forward. And I think it's important to remember that you're not being excluded. I think back the last, committee that we had was when we hired the city manager. And while we had dialogue about that and who sat on it, in the end, it was the committee who and the council and put the questions together, just as I said. The questions were asked, the information came back to the council. It was prepared, HR assisted on that particular one, but then we came to a conclusion after we had 3 people that were interviewed. I think as a start point, and I'm just going to say it because I think that, I think there's 3 entities that fit. I would start with the 2 entities that appear to have through the Oaks and MCOP. I think the movement by the ALCC board currently is what we all had hoped for, but is it an opportunity still when in relation to, I'll say, managing and organizing the facility? That's the start point. And after that is how do you, whoever is selected, how are you going to fill the voids that you don't have personal exposure or experience to, and where are you going to go look for that? And I hope that anybody that's selected at the end keeps that open mind, because there are everybody here that wants to be a part of the solution. So that's my start point. I'm looking at the remaining 4 council members, and I've heard they all have an interest, but we need to move forward and at least kind of a somewhat of a consensus on a committee. Yes.
I didn't get a chance to raise my hand and say that I would like to be on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with, after having listened to everyone, I believe that the MCOP and Oaks would be the top choices. And the nice thing about Oaks is that they're willing to work with the ALCC if it should come to that. Depends on how the interviews go.
So I have 4 council members that have an interest, and we need to seat 2. I think if you go beyond that, it's a quorum, and then it's. And please don't take the discussion wrong about public or not. I think Councilman Michelangelo's point should be well taken. We've been down here having this conversation now for a while, and unfortunately, the comments may be misconstrued. Comments that are sent out believe there's something more than they are. We held the city manager's interviews in the same fashion. So I'm looking at the 4 council members, and then they all have an interest, so somebody's going to have to either state the reason why, greater than it has been, or decline, and so we can move forward.
Decline in terms of
Sitting on the committee.
Decline.
Yeah. There can be 3. There can be 3 because if you have 4, it's a quorum.
And you're included.
Yes. I am included.
If nobody wants to do it, I'm still available, Your Honor.
Are we looking for a decline or
Or you want to be on the committee?
I would like to be on.
So now we have 5 members plus myself. So we're not going to get this decided, it appears. Mr. Pastu, I'm looking for you because we've done this before, and I think there's some other discussion that council has to have on how to make this
You want
selection.
to, if I may, Your Honor?
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit further about it? There's some things that we can structure in the interim of this next week.
Yes.
For your meeting on the 5th and ponder, some questions, and then also with, who may be interested in serving and how we may come up with a group, so.
And I guess I would support that for this reason. I think city manager, in discussion with each council member that has an interest, can ask the questions also about relationships and how close it would be and how it may or may not impact how the flow of the questions go. We want to be fair, and we want to be ask it. And John, you're right. There are going to be some direct questions that need to have answers, and and because it's really about how we're going to do it.
Your
So I'm
Honor,
going to leave it to the city
Your Honor,
manager.
if I may,
Yep,
because
Councilman.
I think, time is of the essence, and we're all big boys and girls, so I just want to explore this with council. If I remove myself, I decline. Kelly said she'd like to be on, but she understands that she may not be the best. So the question I have is I can get to this quick,
Sure.
between Michelle and Paula, who come from nonprofit kind of taxing authority, which one of you two would like to be on the committee?
I want to be on it partly because of the nonprofit.
Then I'll decline.
Okay, Michelle said she declined. Out of the
Gentlemen,
two,
which one?
now of the two
We're gonna
gentlemen,
we're gonna
which
get
one?
there.
I would very much like to serve. I think Mr. Lavender was talking, ALCC's been around for 75 years. They hope to be around for 75 more years in some form or fashion, regardless of who's running it. I'll be 105 when that time comes, so I'll probably be dead and gone. But my son will be 77 and my daughter will be 75. This will be a future that my kids see. I'd like to build that.
I've been around for a long time with all three entities. I know them well, and I know that they'll serve our community very well, whichever one we select. I would like to be a part of that selection, obviously, because I know them, and I've been here a lifelong resident for 51 years, and I've been to the community center many a time in the past, and would like to be a part of that in the future, too.
But I think to reiterate the mayor's point of serving as kind of a facilitator here, the council is going to make the decision, not the committee. All the committee's doing is asking questions and doing the due diligence. They're bringing back that information to council to make the decision. So again, out of the two of you, which one is gonna take the serve on the committee? And if I have to, we're gonna do scissors, rock, paper.
Don't go that far.
Jeez.
An aside, if I may, Mr. Mayor, there are some questions that were included in the memorandum that the city manager put out, which has been disseminated, which I am refraining from asking in this meeting, because this is a public meeting, and I believe the questions to the entities which would be asked would not reflect well on those entities, or I would anticipate the answers would not lead down a path which would be publicly favorable to them, but which I believe would be important to get that information from to make our decision. Now, whether I submit those questions to the city manager or whether I am so lucky to be selected for the committee, I would be very happy to have those questions considered. And I believe that it must be done, and I believe it is critical that it's done in a closed session to maintain the face of the entities that are applying.
Okay.
My understanding is that we're going to base the questions ourselves here.
Correct.
And whoever comes forward is going to present those questions to those entities. So whoever is the person that does it, you're just the facilitator of those questions.
So you're okay with Andrew being on the committee?
Yeah, because in the end, we're all going to make that decision.
Here, there's your committee, Andrew, you, and Paul.
So we're going to move forward. We have at least those that have a consensus here, hopefully, for the committee. I'll leave it to Mr. Pastu to move forward and make those contacts with each to make sure there's not conflict. And if there is later, and I'm not talking conflict with the entities, but conflict with themselves to be able to get this done in a fashion, then obviously we have others that are interested to step in when it comes time to do the interviews, because we don't know when those are going to be. So, Mr. Pastu, if you could work on that, and I guess here quickly also start drafting what we believe will be appropriate questions or from a topic, and council can send everything to the city manager. Other comments or questions from council at this point? If there's nothing further, I think we at least have some progress, and we'll see where we go. And thank you all for being here this evening. I appreciate your input and discussion.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
A motion from Councilman Klein, supported by Councilman Germaini. Before we vote, Mr. Pastu, is there any final question for us? No. Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman? Yes. Michaelangeli? Yes. Vining? Yes. Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.